What's up, City Slickers? For today's video, we're headed to beautiful San Francisco, California. Or as people in the comment section of every video call it, San Transcisco, California, where the homeless have more rights than you do, and where they're teaching your children to be... Alright, I'll stop. But in all seriousness, it's no secret that in the last few years, San Francisco's reputation has been going to shit. No pun intended. The tech capital of the world has seen a sharp decline in population, business traffic, and transportation ridership, and an increase in cost of living, homelessness, and petty crime. Meanwhile, housing prices stay outrageously unaffordable even for those making six figures in the city's lucrative job market. San Francisco and the Metro Bay Area at large is notorious for being incredibly resistant to new housing developments, almost laughably so. One reason often cited for the lack of housing development in SF is that they're already full. It's the second most dense city in the US, falling just behind NYC at a density of 7,195 people per square kilometer. Those opposed to housing in SF like to tout a lack of space as a reason to not build more inside the city's limits. But what if there were a way to make more room? What if the city could get rid of some of its decaying infrastructure while simultaneously relieving some of the pressure on its ballooning housing market? Well, some San Franciscans want just that. The space in question is San Francisco's aptly named Central Freeway, which is located right in the thick of the city by the bay, acting as the divider between the Soma, or South of Market neighborhood, and the Mission District. These are two of SF's most densely populated neighborhoods. The freeway is a roughly 1-mile spur of US 101, which runs through the city from north to south. The Central Freeway begins at a wide interchange at the west end of Interstate 80 and travels west above Division Street and 13th Street. As it approaches the end, US 101 exits onto Mission Street to access Van Ness Avenue. The remainder of the freeway is signed as Exit 434B from US 101 and comes to the service at Market Street and Octavia Boulevard. If you've watched this video by Dave of City Beautiful, you'd know the Central Freeway was built to be a part of the 1948 master plan to cover the city in freeways and was partially constructed throughout 1955. However, due to the city's freeway revolts, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors passed legislation removing the remainder of construction of the freeway from their plans. However, in 1989, disaster struck, as the 6.9 magnitude Loma Prieta earthquake destroyed swaths of the city, killing 63 people, injuring thousands, and leaving many residents with their homes turned to rubble. The earthquake did not spare the Central Freeway, and the portion north of Fell Street was demolished in 1992 after it was deemed too expensive to repair. There was actually a political fight between the primarily Chinese American residents of the Richmond and Sunset districts, who supported this portion of the freeway's reconstruction for business accessibility, while the predominantly white and black residents of Hayes Valley, supported by Mayor Willie Brown, opposed it, viewing the freeway as detrimental to the urban fabric. A resolution was reached by taking the two-way freeway down to Market Street at Octavia Boulevard, which was created in the wake of the former freeway's right-of-way. However, this compromise has resulted in one of the most dangerous intersections in the city, seeing 135 crashes from 2005 to 2022. Yikes. Might have to find a different place to ride your scraper bike. Due to traffic violence such as this, concerns about urban blight and equity, and anxieties over noise and air pollution, many San Franciscans are thinking that the freeway's time might be up. The man leading the charge is a school teacher named Daniel Owens who lives a block away from the elevated roadway. He sees the freeway as a divider of neighborhoods, forcing an abrupt end to the Mission District and interrupting the natural flow of urban fabric from one area to the next. I mean, to be fair, the street it runs over is literally called Division Street. And as a nice play on words, Daniel has named his advocacy group, get this, Vision Boulevard.
That's called motherfucking bars, you know nothing about that!
His concern is also with the environmental damage that the freeway brings. In an interview with the SF Examiner, he states, "I absolutely have soot on the windowsill, and I'm certain it's from car pollution." He says, for those who live adjacent to the freeway, they experience a ton of noise pollution. In an op-ed he wrote for the San Francisco Standard in June, where he unaffectionately refers to it as the stub, he explains that a study for the removal of the freeway would cost only $150,000 of the city's transportation department's $16 billion budget. So merely a drop in McCovey Cove. He also advertises that the Vision Boulevard campaign has gotten traffic and transportation engineers on board in order to alleviate some of the concerns around traffic clog-ups without the freeway. Now, Daniel is not the first person to have this idea, and San Francisco isn't the first city to consider something like this. All across the US, urban freeways are being removed, converted to boulevards, public parks, and housing. This is because after decades of noise pollution, urban degradation, air pollution, and traffic violence, citizens are starting to realize that the cost of their freeways don't make up for the benefit of convenience. And as urban populations have soared and US cities have not kept up with transportation demand, the solution of just one more lane, bro, is not working to quell traffic. People are starting to wake up to the idea that the neighborhoods destroyed to build our urban freeways were much better than the monoliths of concrete and rebar that we're left with today. So let's say Vision's vision is seen. What happens next? What is the plan for the space left by demolishing the freeway? Well, it's not entirely clear yet. The plan is still in its infancy, but Vision does have some sketches and renders of what some of the infill housing and parks could potentially look like. They also reference a project by Ki-Chung Lee, a UC Berkeley student who was presented an award by the Congress for the New Urbanism for his design, turning the freeway into a boulevard with a linear park and plenty of housing infill in the surrounding area, and also converting the intersection into a traffic circle. Now that looks like a perfect place to ghost ride the whip. Additionally, San Francisco recently failed to match their housing element with the state of California's requirements, so now developers can apply for what's known as Builder's Remedy projects throughout the city. Builder's Remedy projects are fast-tracked housing developments that do not have to comply as strictly with local zoning and plan requirements, and are pushed through the permit phase much quicker than typical. Think of these as the carpool lane of housing developments, which is ironic because if you've ever tried to drive in California, you know the carpool lane isn't much faster.
Got him!
However, I think that if the freeway were to be demolished, this would be a good spot for a lot of these developments, as the neighborhoods are already very dense and residents are already used to the noise pollution of the freeway, so concerns about construction noise might be lessened. Plus, if a linear park were built like in Ki-Chung Lee's project, the new, denser housing developments could breathe new life into an area that's currently just a dark tunnel serving only motorists. But let's take a step back for a second though. Should they even do this? Is any of this even possible? We're talking about the city of San Francisco here. The same municipality that was in hot water earlier this year for estimating the cost of a single public toilet to be $1.7 million. It's safe to say they're pretty shitty at making deals. And even if they do tear it down, will the city actually build the amount of affordable housing necessary to alleviate the growing housing crisis? They have a history of shrugging off housing responsibility to developers who promise certain percentages of rent-controlled or low-income units, but seldom deliver. Additionally, it's not like the entire city is on board with this plan. Many residents, including those in the predominantly Hispanic Mission District, fear that a wave of new development on their doorsteps could further the already accelerated gentrification of their formerly working-class neighborhood. Others are concerned that the city simply has more important issues to spend money on at the moment, like the massive increase in the rate of office and retail vacancies, or the current overdose epidemic plaguing the health system. Even in the realm of transportation, some think that the streets below the freeway are in much more rapid need of fixing before the demolition of the stub is even considered. But what do I know? I'm just a YouTuber who doesn't even live in the city. Let's turn to the internet's town square Reddit to see citizens voice their real opinions. So the Reddit thread starts off by somebody just posting Daniel Owen's opinion column that he wrote for the San Francisco Standard in r/San Francisco. One person says, "I'm all for tearing down the freeway, but this is bullshit. The city fails to build housing elsewhere. They won't build thousands of new homes in our lifetime, even once the freeway is gone." Another person says, "I think that the remaining central freeway stub is unnecessary and should be removed, but this reasoning for it doesn't make much sense. Where in this current path would you build more housing?" Another person says, "Last time it took an earthquake," clearly mentioning the 1989 earthquake that took down the Embarcadero Freeway. And another person replies saying, "And everyone was worried about what would happen with all that traffic. Yet here we are today with a thriving and beautiful ferry building and a giant waterfront walkway with tons of pedestrians." And then this person said, "Look forward to the grand opening in year 2103. And I just had to upvote that. It's funny that they mentioned delays because that reminds me of the Big Dig in Boston, which is a project that would probably reflect a realized Vision Boulevard. If you're unfamiliar with it, the TLDR is that Boston wanted to alleviate traffic congestion and enhance their downtown by rerouting Interstate 93 underground. Originally budgeted at $2.6 billion, Costs ballooned to over $14.6 billion due to mismanagement, design changes, and legal issues. Delays were extensive, far surpassing initial projections, and the project took about 25 years to complete. However, it's undeniable that it massively improved Boston's urban fabric, and most residents would say that despite its challenges, it turned out to be worth it. Additionally, this wouldn't be the first time that San Francisco removed a highway to improve their urban fabric. Remember that the portion north of Market Street was removed in the early 90s and converted into Octavia Boulevard. The '89 earthquake also severely damaged the Embarcadero Freeway, which ran along the city's eastern waterfront. The freeway was torn down rather than rebuilt, which ended up being one of the best decisions in San Francisco's history, and the Embarcadero is now one of the most vibrant and beautiful areas of the city, housing world-famous attractions like Fisherman's Wharf and the Exploratorium Science Museum. A few hundred miles north, Seattle is in the process of replacing their Alaskan Way viaduct with a tunnel and expanding the waterfront into a tree-lined boulevard complete with bike lanes. So all things considered, should this project go ahead? It's notoriously expensive to build anything in San Francisco, and I'm willing to bet the same is true just for tearing things down. However, history shows that it can be done. If we look at the portion of the city along Octavia Boulevard, it's an outstanding neighborhood chock full of local businesses and amenities, and far better than when it was just a freeway tract. Plus, the freeway itself is going to need repairs soon, and rather than invest money into the upkeep of an outdated structure, why don't we put that money into something that will benefit the city in the long run? A lot of the gripe I see online about this project is about traffic and housing. But even without the added housing density, this would still be a great project, as freeways are so much more detrimental to our cities than just taking up valuable space. And as for traffic, both the Embarcadero and Octavia Street have been able to carry the capacity of their former freeways for decades now. Now, it goes without saying that this will not be an easy project. San Francisco is a city notorious for mismanaging public funds, and California is a state notorious for being extremely difficult to build in. However, with enough public support and cooperation from local and state organizations like Caltrans, it could be possible to push through. It's also important to note that in March, during a campaign speech, President Biden announced a $3.3 billion project to restore communities split by highways. Now that Biden has dropped out of the presidential race, it's unclear if this will continue to be a campaign promise under Harris, but if it is, some of this funding could definitely go towards San Francisco. I also understand the concerns for gentrification and further increased housing costs for nearby residents, so I think that the end design of this project should carefully consider its context and what it will be adding and taking away from the city. But even though it will likely take forever and cost double the estimated cost, so did the Big Dig and so did the Embarcadero. But in the end, few citizens regret either of these projects. No matter the timeline or the end design, it's something that needs to be done, as not only would it remove a colossal piece of urban oppression, but also provide new opportunities for growth. To put it bluntly, freeways don't belong in cities. Cities should be built for humans, not for automobiles. And the more work that we do to remove these concrete behemoths, the better off every citizen is. But what do you think? Is it worth it for the city to consider this project? Is this going to further gentrify the mission? Should the Warriors have kept Clay? Can you do the thizzle dance? Let me know in the comments below. I've got some great content coming up for you guys with more in-person footage and new locations, so stay tuned. Also, if you want me to make a full video on some of the topics I touched on in this video, like Builder's Remedy or the Embarcadero destruction, let me know as well. As always, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We're almost at 1,000 members of our little family. Until next time, City Slickers.